Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Boa tarde, senhoras e senhores. A aula hoje é em inglês sobre o Barbeiro de Sevilha. Today we're going to talk about Gioacchino Rossini's The Barber of Seville. And this lecture is part of a series that we're doing here in this channel. And we already did, the series is called Understanding Opera, Enjoying Opera. So we have opera, history of opera. We've already done Understanding Tosca, La Traviata, now the Barber of Seville, Rigoletto, the Brazilian opera Il Guarani by Brazilian composer Carlos Gomes. So this is a lecture that is part of this series. And in this channel you find many other subjects and I hope you enjoy it here, okay? So, to start, like I usually do, to talk about the Barber of Seville, I like to tell people where the operas came from. So, in the case of the Barber of Seville, the argument comes from the Figaro trilogy by the French playwright and writer Beaumarchais, Pierre-Auguste Caron de Beaumarchais. I love saying his name. It's his name and Christoph Willibald von Gluck, the two names that I like saying the most. Anyway, Beaumarchais is a very interesting guy because he was I'll bring this in a couple minutes. But Beaumarchais was a secretary to Louis XV of France. He was also the music teacher to the princesses, to the daughters of Louis XV. And he was a watchmaker, a diplomat, and a spy. I mean, excuse me, what else? Like a true Renaissance man. Anyway, he writes these three plays, which we call the Figaro trilogy. Why? Because the character of Figaro is present in all of them, and he is kind of the plot. The plot goes through this character, okay? So why do I bring this? Because everybody knows the Barber of Seville by Rossini and the Marriage of Figaro by Mozart. They are both inspired, they're both adaptations of these plays, but they're out of order. This is why I like to do this little table here, because you have The Barber of Seville is the original play, which was released in 1775, okay? This is Young Figaro, okay? Young Figaro. Then The Marriage of Figaro is a little older Figaro who's going to get married. And this is 1874, so almost 10 years later, okay? And then 5 years later, La Mère Coupable, the guilty mother. I'm not sure about the translation into English, but it means the guilty mother. And it was also adapted into an opera by French composer, 20th century French composer, Darius Milhaud, who very interesting composer. I have not heard La Mère Coupable by Milhaud. I don't know, it should be an interesting opera, but I don't know, I haven't heard it. So, but this is why I bring this table. Young Figaro, a few years later, and older Figaro. But Rossini, The Barber of Seville, Rossini's opera comes out in 1816. And The Marriage of Figaro, Mozart's The Marriage of Figaro, comes out in 1786, only 2 years after it was, the play came out. So Mozart and Rossini adapted them in different order. So Mozart adapted the second plot in 1786, and 30 years later, Rossini adapted the earlier plot. Okay, just so that you understand how this works. What makes The Barber of Seville such an interesting masterpiece? Can we call it a masterpiece? I think we can. And why is it so incredible? The music. There's no question that Rossini was writing to his audience. Okay, and who was his audience? Different than Mozart's audience. Who was Mozart's audience 30 years earlier? Noblemen, okay, the nobility. Mozart was an employee of the Austrian emperor. Okay, oh my God, who was I can't remember now. Leopold II. I'm not sure now. No, not very confused now. Anyway, he was an employee to the Austrian emperor. And Rossini was an employee of us. I mean, Rossini was composing music to you and for me. So it's a different kind of music that we enjoy. We have to be kind of lured into good music so that we'll keep coming back and buying tickets and all that. And Mozart didn't have it. He had to please the king. So it's a different ball game, okay? Anyway, I was asking, why is the Barber of Seville such a masterpiece? Because of the music. The music is phenomenal. It opens with this incredible overture. Pirawa, Pirawa. It's an 8-minute long overture with wonderful themes, none of which comes back in the opera. This is part of why we think that Rossini writes in the classical tradition. Okay, Mozart is without a doubt a classical composer. Rossini starts more or less classical, and then he will end in the Romantic period. But his earlier operas are definitely in the classical tradition. And one of them is this. I mean, the overture is a separate piece. It could be a piece of in a concert. It doesn't have the themes of the opera like it would happen, for example, in the Romantic period with Carmen, for example. You have ram which is the theme to the bullfight of the fourth act. And you have which is the torero song from the second act, of course. So in Carmen you have the themes from the opera. In the Barber of Seville, no, it's this thing never comes back in the opera. It's spent in the overture, which is very interesting, and one of the characteristics of classical operas, like it happens in Mozart's The Marriage of Figaro. This, it never comes back. It's just an overture, okay? It's a phenomenal music. Anyway, so you have this overture, and in the overture you are invited to what we call Signor Crescendo. Rossini was known as Little Mozart, Piccolo Mozart, some Italians call him that, and also Signor Crescendo. What does Signor Crescendo mean? He keeps adding instruments to the piece. He starts with just a little group of instruments, and he keeps building up the volume by adding instruments. So that's why he's known as Signor Crescendo. And especially in the bass area of the second act, La calunnia è un venticello, you will hear this technique going on, okay? Anyway, the plot. You have three main characters. Figaro, of course, who is the Barber of Seville. And what is a barber in the 18th century? Is a factotum, like he says in his own aria. Largo factotum della città largo. What does that mean? Open wide for the factotum of the city. I'm going through. I'm the factotum. What is a factotum? Is the does it all, okay? He's a guy, he's a plumber, he's a dentist, he will keep you company, whatever. He'll do whatever. So the factotum. And that's one of the problems with the plot for the censorship. The Count, one of the other characters, we have three characters, the Barber of Seville, the Figaro, and then you have the Count Almaviva and Rosina, who will become the Countess later on in the Marriage of Figaro. So I was saying, why is this a problem? Because the Count needs help from the barber to accomplish his goals. What is proven here is that Figaro is smarter than the Count, and that doesn't play well with nobility. Okay, they want to be the hot shots. Okay, so this is interesting. That's one of the problems with the Marriage of Figaro later on. All of the employees are smarter than the noble people. The women are smarter than the men, and that brings noise into the censors. Okay, so in the first act, you hear phenomenal music right in the beginning. As the curtain opens, you will hear the Count sing a serenade for Rosina, and he sings Ecco ridenta in cielo, sporta la bella aurora. This is called melismatic singing. And Rossini loves this immensely, okay? And this is kind of stylistic of Rossini. And I sang the Count once in school. And it's all of these, this is the score, the piano vocal score to the Barber of Seville. And you have, for example, this melisma is hard for me to see, but this sort of melismas, you see here, all of little notes sound like a chicken or something like that. And he says, questa anima amante hota. I used to sing this so well. It's hard. Anyway, this is melismas. These are melismas, okay? And it's full of this, both in the Count aria and in Rosina's aria later on. You'll hear this a lot. Anyway, so the Count sings his serenade. It doesn't work out. Who shows up to help him out? Largo factotum della città largo. It's Figaro. Figaro qua, Figaro là, Figaro su, Figaro giù. And he's saying everybody wants Figaro. Figaro goes up, Figaro goes down, Figaro does everything. Sono il factotum della città, sono il factotum della città, della città, della città, della città. La, 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 la. It's phenomenal. And the audience, I mean, every time I heard this live, it's a thrill. The audience can't stop clapping because, and this is what opera is about. Okay, it's every time I talk about opera, I try to bring this emotion into it, because opera is not a bunch of fat people singing on stage from a distance. Opera is an experience, kind of a cathartic experience that you have with the audience. The audience is an absolute part of the opera. You have to scream, you have to throw flowers. This is part of it. Okay, and I miss it. I really miss it. I hope we'll go back to doing opera live once again. What a crazy times. How crazy times we're living. Anyway, so Figaro shows up and he he's saying, I'm gonna solve all of your problems. What is up? What do you need? And Figaro says, well, do this. I'll play the guitar for you, and you sing this instead. And he sings a different kind of cavatina. Il mio nome la di da da la la da da la da da. Sweeter, and that does the trick. Rosina shows up in the balcony, only to be forbidden to do it by her tutor, who is Bartolo, Don Bartolo, who wants to marry Rosina because of her dowry. Ooh, she has money. She inherited some money. He's her tutor, and he wants to marry her. But then the Count shows up disguised as a poor guy. Remember that it worked with Gilda in Rigoletto? Now it works again. Okay, women apparently love poor people. Anyway, you will hear, if you go to Ekai's Spotify, you will hear enjoying the Barber of Seville. I selected some tunes there, and you will hear how amazing the ensembles are. The duets, the Figaro Almaviva duet is brilliant. Then the Figaro Rosina duet is brilliant. It's unbelievable. The music is phenomenal. And then Rosina shows up. Phenomenal aria, una voce poco fa, una voce poco fa. And later on she sings, in the same aria, she sings, io sono dolcile, sono rispettosa, sono obbediente, dolce amorosa. It's so nice because she says, I'm sweet and loving and everything, but se mi toccano, sarò una vipera, sarò. If you mess with me, I'll become a viper. Ooh, a snake. Yes. And the character of Rosina, who will become the Countess in The Marriage of Figaro, is so rich, so incredible, that it's originally written for mezzo-soprano. But sopranos also wanted to sing it. So many times you will hear this aria transposed so that a soprano can easily sing it. It's amazing because it's so famous that sopranos wanted to do it too. And the same thing happened with Figaro. It's so funny. The recording I'm playing here, it's Plácido Domingo singing Figaro, and Domingo is a tenor. Why is he doing the baritone? Because he wanted to, and also he is a little older in this recording, so the voice is like everybody else in the human body. It goes down, okay? So things that I can sing today at 52, I can't sing high repertoire the way I could 20 years ago, but it's fun. So Domingo sings this because he recorded it first because he was rich and he could, and it sold, of course, it sold many records. It's a great recording. I think it's Claudio Abbado, the conductor. I can't remember now. Anyway, is it? Yeah, it's Claudio Abbado, the conductor. It's a phenomenal recording. Very, very, very nice. Anyway, so Rosina shows herself, and well, the first act is all about the Count trying to convince Rosina to go with him. Okay, so in this, the finale of the first act, which is a wonderful piece of composition, and you have to understand what a finale is. In classical operas, a finale is an ensemble of singers that start with a solo, then a duet, a trio, quartet, quintet, sextet, etc. It keeps growing. The chorus comes in, the full orchestra, and it was kind of a game that composers played with the audience. They kept adding singers, they kept adding action so that it would grow as an ensemble, and that was a tradition. It seems So many, especially buffa operas, which is the case. Buffa in Italian means funny, so it's a Barber of Seville is an opera buffa, you have these finales, these ensembles, very interesting. Mozart does in the end of the first act of Marriage of Figures, a brilliant finale, and here in Rossini's The Barber of Seville we have also this finale. In a finale is great because all of the singers sing at the same time different music, and you can understand each of the words. It's phenomenal. What other art? I mean, if you have 8 characters on stage on a play and they're all talking at the same time, you can understand, but in opera you can't because of music, obviously. So you hear different tunes, different characters, and it's phenomenal. And the second act is also the Count trying to disguise himself. On the first act he disguised himself as a soldier. On the second act he disguised himself as a music teacher. He says that Basilio, Rosina's music teacher, is ill, so he'll take his place, and the scene is very funny. It's very well built, and that's the music. And it's really phenomenal. I mean, there isn't much to talk about because the plot is very simple, but the last thing I'll say is that one of the other characteristics of that bring this opera to a classical tradition is the little tag ending that we have in this opera. When the opera ends, you have the characters, you have actually the actors come out of the of character, and they wish the audience a great time or something like that. This is this happens in Don Giovanni, for example, 1787, I think. Mozart, the opera ends, and the actors, the curtain falls, and the actors come outside the curtain and they sing, and they say, well, this was the story of Don Giovanni, and you know, he was a bad guy and he had what he deserved, and that's what happened to bad people. The same thing happens here with the Barber of Seville. As the opera is over, the characters, amore fede eterna si vege in voi reinar, oh, may love and eternal faith be with you, or something like that, which is very funny because it doesn't, I mean, it's not part of the story, okay? That's it, ladies and gentlemen, a little bit about the Barber of Seville. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to check out the other operas that we have here in Ekai's channel. And I wish you a great day, and stay safe and wash your hands. And let's all come out of this quarantine alive, okay? Thank you very much. Bye-bye.